tension, the drama. I'd like to call the Arizona State Parks Board meeting together on Thursday, February 17th, 2022. And with that, I would like to ask Board Member Jeff Buchanan if he would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Jeff?
Thank you, Bill. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Board Member Buchanan. With that, let's have a roll call, please.
Dale Larson,
I'm here.
John Sefton,
Present.
Jeff Buchanan, we'll take that. Debbie Johnson. Here. Sarah King.
Here.
Terry Palmberg.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much, and welcome to both Jeff and Sarah on the phone. And if you are unable to hear some of the dialogue or you need to, feel free to interrupt and just say, could you repeat that, so that we make sure that both of you get all the information as well. To start the meeting, as traditionally, we like to remind everybody of what our mission statement and vision statements are. The mission is managing and conserving Arizona's natural, cultural, and recreational resources for the benefit of the people, both in our parks and through our partners. And our vision statement is Arizona State Parks and Trails is indispensable to the economies, communities, and environments of Arizona. So with that in mind, we'll go right to the agenda. Item D1, the consideration of action to approve the minutes from our last meeting on January 20th. Are there any comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion's been made by Board Member Johnson. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Board Member Palmberg. All those in favor by a voice acclamation? Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. D2 is the discussion and consideration of action to approve, modify, or deny funding for the submitted 2022 ARPA grant applications, and Mickey Rogers is going to take us through that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The American Rescue Plan Act provides funding to assist facilities that were impacted during COVID. Statistically, the use of outdoor recreation nationwide increased over 20% during the peak of COVID. Outdoor facilities, including local parks and trails, provide safe and socially distant spaces for families and children to go during this pandemic. They also provided essential benefits to the mental and physical health of these people, which is specifically defined in the Rescue Act guidelines. The focus of these funds is at facilities that need sewer and water upgrades and to upgrade broadband, but also at facilities with parks and neighborhoods that have been identified as underserved communities. These funds are available loosely in the same categories as the appropriated Heritage Fund. A total of $5 million was made available for this program. In this round, the City of Tucson is applying for funds at their C.S. Martin Gunny Barreras Park, which is a revitalization and development project in southwest Tucson that will significantly increase outdoor recreation activities for the community. The park is located in a qualified census tract area and is at Sunnyside School District property. However, there are no restrictions on these facilities during school hours, which is important to seniors and adults in the surrounding communities. The funding requests will be for the elements to include additional walking paths, a new outdoor fitness court, and lights on the remaining 4 athletic fields. The entire project will be using other funds to upgrade the irrigation, replace a playground, renovate a track around the field, renovate a restroom facility, add another restroom, and also to put in a splash pad. This additional funding will allow Tucson to complete its renovation. One of the questions I would ask at the AORC meeting is why Tucson didn't use their own Rescue Act funds for this. So the rescue funds in Tucson were allocated to 2 categories. One was providing grant money to provide recovery funding for relief to families, essential and frontline workers, small businesses, community reinvestment and recovery, park, arts and cultures, workforce and youth development, and promoting affordable, stable housing. The second category was designated for city spending spread out over 4 years. The focus of this funding was COVID-related cleaning, hygiene, and sanitation, parks irrigation improvements, teen and youth programs, and enhanced recreational opportunities. Tucson felt that this project is shovel-ready, meets the criteria of the Heritage Program, and it's a great opportunity to maximize the ability to increase the number of elements at this park. Both ARC and staff recommend to fully fund this project. I'd be happy to see any questions you have.
Thank you, Mickey, and I know we have Greg Jackson on the phone also from Tucson with us. So, board members, any comments or questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Do we have the words given?
Oh, I'm
I'll ma-
sorry.
I'll-
I was
I'll
waiting
make
to
the
do the roll
motion.
call. My apologies.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that the Arizona State Parks Board approve funding for the submitted 2022 American Rescue Plan Act grant applications as follows. Tucson's CSM Martin Gunny Barreras Park Project in the amount of $500,000.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
A second.
The motion has been made and seconded to approve the ARPA allocation of $500,000. Any other thoughts, comments? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Dale Larson,
Aye.
John Sefton,
Aye.
Jeff Buchanan,
Aye.
Debbie Johnson,
Aye.
Sarah King,
Aye.
Terry Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passed.
Very good. And again, Greg Jackson, thank you for being on the phone with us, and good luck with the rest of your development.
Appreciate it.
Okay, let's go to item D3, discussion and consideration of action to approve, modify, or deny for the Recreation Trails non-motorized grant application. Mickey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Just a reminder, I'm going to give a brief update on how we score our projects. So the scoring you see on the board are developed from the 2020 Trails Plan. And there are 3 priorities, with the highest priority getting the most points, second priority the second, and the third priority the least amount of points. So typically, what has been typical in the past years and continues to be so is maintaining trails and signage has been the top priority for several years, while constructing a new trail and acquiring property have been lower priority, because the thought of the group was maintain existing trails before we build new trails. So that has always been the case. So the scoring is there, and the bonus points were adopted by the board. But the scoring is calculated off from the budget. If 10% or more of a budget is spent on a priority line item, such as trail maintenance, they would receive 10 points for that item. If 5%, for example, if 5% of the total budget was spent on maintaining trails, they would receive 5 points. So it's automatically calculated off that budget. There is no involvement. It's all calculated automatically. So typically a project has scored between 20 and 40 points. They don't score real high based on trying to get so many categories within the budget. With the money available, it's almost impossible to score high on these projects. But the past 2 years, all the projects that we brought to you have been shovel-ready and have been eligible, have been approved for scoring. So at this point, you're going to get low scores on some of these that are just doing maintaining existing trails, constructing new trails, but they're certainly worthy projects and are eligible for funding.
Thank you, Mickey. And I brought this up to staff after we got the agenda, and I saw that the point score values for this item and the next one was in the 20 range. And so I just asked if Mickey would come back and explain again and clarify, since some of the other projects have 90, 85, and these higher point values. So just on that alone, before we get into the proposal, any other comments or questions from the board member regarding the scoring? All right, thank you, Mickey. Really appreciate
Chair
it.
Jeff Buchanan with the quote.
Oh, go ahead, Jeff, sorry.
Yeah, I couldn't hear everything exactly, but I think that, or what I interpreted from my past discussions with Mickey, is one of the reasons for low scoring is that anything that involves new trail construction sort of gets shunted to a low scoring category. That doesn't mean we shouldn't approve it, but it doesn't score as well as high as improvements to trails that already exist. That's what my interpretation was, and I just asked Mickey for a confirmation of that.
Mr. Buchanan, that is correct.
Thanks, Jeff, for bringing that up. Yeah, it gets a little tricky, so. All right. Mickey, do you want to go ahead then and go into the City of Page proposal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. The Recreational Trails Program provides grant funding for the construction and maintaining of non-motorized trails and trailhead facilities. Each year, a minimum of 30% of appropriated RTP funds must be used for non-motorized projects, $574,000. In addition, a minimum of 40% of appropriated RTP funds must be used for diverse projects, which is defined as 2 or more allowable uses on a trail, or $760,000. In this funding cycle, the City's Page is requesting funds to build a 4.5-mile single-track trail in Southeast Page along a red rock mesa. The project would include improving the entrance to the area, developing a large parking area, signage, and a vault toilet. Future plans are to expand this area to include a bike park pump track and eventually connect with Page's existing 10-mile rim trail. If approved, the city has an aggressive timeline to complete this work by the end of the calendar year. The city is providing over $50,000 in matching funds of staff time and equipment. The city has used a trail professional builder to assist with the layout of this trail, and the area has been surveyed. The project is shovel-ready, and staff and Ascot and Eric recommend to fully fund this project. And one of the questions that was asked by Ascot, if the parking lot is going to be big enough for horse trailers, and the answer is yes, it's going to be big enough for horse trailers. However, the trails are single track trails and not developed for horses at this time. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And Lynn's also at the phone.
So thank you and welcome Lynn Cormier. Any questions or comments from the board members on the City of Page proposal?
I have a question.
Sure. Bob.
How much further after this 4.5, how much more trail has to be developed to reach the 10-mile loop?
They already have an existing 10-mile loop. They're going to connect to
But
it.
how far to get there? Or is this going to get it there?
I would defer to Lynn to answer that question. Lynn, did you hear that answer?
If I understood her correctly, is she asking like the distance between the two separate loop trails?
How to connect with the 10 miles of existing trails, how far that is.
Okay, currently they're about a mile apart. So from where one edge of one loop to the other, the closest perimeter is about a mile. So at some point we would like to look at funding or assistance maybe to look at how the best we could connect those two trails so that we would have over about 17, 18 miles of biking and hiking.
Very good, thanks. That was my question. That helped me out.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Sure, go ahead,
Mr. Chair,
Jeff.
Jeff Buchanan with a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so they got my attention with the comment about it's a single track trail but not developed for use for horses. I guess I'm a little confused by that. I mean, I'm assuming it's multi-use. Is it because of the gates or something that means it's not developed for horses?
Actually, we really don't have a big use for horses in our town. Our current 10-mile loop trail does not allow motorized vehicles or horses because of the sheer cliff. And so this one we were just kind of following in kind of the same pattern. I guess we could allow for horses. It's just funny because we don't really think about it. We don't have a large horse population here. And usually people there's so many other areas that they ride in that they don't really think about these particular trails.
I guess my recommendation, if it's going to be a multi-use trail, unless there's a safety concern or something for horses, that you should allow them. I mean, that that lines up with the basic definition for a multi-use trail.
Yeah, it sounds like they're allowed, it's just that maybe not as encouraged as a multi-purpose with horses on it, but apparently they would love for you to come and baptize that, Jeff, with you and your horse when you get the opportunity.
Well, next time I'm up north, I probably will.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from board members? Hearing none, is there a motion to consider approval?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Arizona State Parks Board approve funding for the 2022 Recreational Trails Program non-motorized grant application as follows. City of Page's Red Mesa Rim Trail Project in the amount of $149,925.
Thank you, Board Member Johnson. Is there a second?
John Sefton will second.
The motion has been made and seconded. Are there any other further questions or concerns? Hearing none, a roll call vote.
Dale Larson,
Aye.
John Sefton,
Aye.
Jeff Buchanan,
Aye.
Debbie Johnson,
Aye.
Sarah King,
Aye.
Terry Palmberg.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passed.
Thank you. And thank you, Lynn, for being on the phone and answering those questions.
Thank you from the bottom of our heart. We appreciate it here at the City of Page.
Very good. Have a good one. All right, item D4, for the non-motorized grants for the Arizona Trail Association.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the Heritage Fund Non-Motorized Program provides grant funding for construction and maintaining non-motorized trails and trailhead facilities. A total of $500,000 was appropriated by the Arizona State Legislature in 2021. A sponsor may apply for up to 20% of these funds or $100,000 per project. In this round, the Arizona Trail Association is proposing to build 3 miles of new trail to bypass a section away from the roadway, and that is along steep slopes on Passage 22A. The funding will be used for a mechanized trail crew to excavate the trail, and volunteers will be used to finish this trail work with hand tools of this 3 miles trail. The grant will also be used to purchase 3 gates, which will be installed by volunteers and staff. Total match for this project is $25,888. Staff, Ascot, and ARC recommend to fully fund this project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Do we have anybody on the phone on this item, Mickey?
Matt was going to be on the phone. I'm not sure if he is or not.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Matthew Nelson with the Arizona Trail Association, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you being on the call with us. Comments from the board members? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair, Palmberg here. I move that the Arizona State Parks Board approve funding for the 2022 Heritage Fund non-motorized grant application as follows. The Arizona Trails Association's AZT Sunflower North Realignment Project in the amount of $71,960.
Thank you, Board Member Palmberg. Is there a second?
Debbie Johnson, second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Are there any further questions or concerns? Hearing none, a roll call vote.
Dale Larson,
Aye.
John Sefton,
Aye.
Jeff Buchanan,
Aye.
Debbie Johnson,
Aye.
Sarah King,
Aye.
Terry Palmberg.
Aye.
The motion passed.
Thank you. And thank you, Matt.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you all so much. I look forward to sharing the next great piece of the Arizona Trail with you as soon as we get this built.
All right, appreciate it. Yes.
Mr. Chair, just comment, I really appreciate that both Ascot and AORC committees were involved and approved this decision prior to coming to us. So it was well vetted, and thanks to staff as well.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. And the membership that you have, obviously, AORC speaks for itself with the vice chair on it, but the Arizona Trails Group, too, really does a nice job, and I'm sure they're very committed. So thank you, Terry, for mentioning that. All right, item D5, discussion consideration to approve, modify, or deny funding for the Heritage Fund Environmental Education Grant. Mickey, take it away with Flagstaff, it looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Heritage Fund Environmental Education Grant provides matching funds to develop and promote outdoor environmental protection programs related to outdoor recreation. A total of $500,000 was appropriated by the Arizona State Legislature in their 2021 session. A project sponsor may apply for up to 20% of these appropriated funds, or $100,000 per project. In this round, we have 2 projects that were submitted. The Flagstaff Youth Riders works with youth ages 2 to 18 to teach mountain bike skills safely and efficiently while incorporating environmental stewardship, responsible trail use, trail etiquette, and proper trail maintenance within its program. The group is involved with 3 public schools providing spring and fall recreational programs, summer camp, and a middle school mountain bike team. The grant will assist in funding 2 part-time coordinators for both of these programs. One will focus on the schools, while the other will oversee the fall and spring sessions and the summer camp. In 2021, the program had 569 youth participate in the program. The project will fulfill a critical need to get youth outdoors, be physically active, and engage with the environment. The $49,500 in funding will be matched with $20,484 in cash for these positions. One of the questions that was asked is, for those that can't afford a bike, do they have bikes available? And the answer is, the program currently has 30 mountain bikes to offer for those without a bike, and plan to purchase another 10 to 20 bikes this year. Another question was, where are the mountain bikes stored? During the school sessions, 2 of the schools have secured areas they store the bikes, while the other school does not have one, and they're stored at the nonprofit's office. And during the summer and fall sessions, they're stored at the nonprofit's session. So AORC and staff recommend to fully fund this project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, and I believe Tyler's on the phone.
All right. Welcome, Tyler, on the phone. Questions or comments from the board members?
Has this group
Mr.
received prior
Chair, Jeff
funding?
Buchanan.
Oh,
I'm
Jeff, hang
sorry,
on a
Jeff.
second. Terry has a question,
Go
and then
ahead,
we'll come to
Terry.
you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is the first time, Mr. Chair, this is the first time they've ever applied for funds.
Very good, thank you.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mickey. This question actually is probably related to last year when we provided helmets. I think it was to Arizona Game and Fish for, a provision to motorized riders who are less than 18 years of age. And I didn't hear any mention about helmets in this program. Is that part of their request for funding?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Buchanan, that is not part of the funding, but Tyler can answer the question if they provide helmets for these people that need bikes.
Yeah, that's not part of this specific funding, but all of our programming, like our school programming, where we provide all the equipment, such as bikes, we also provide helmets, water bottles, and everything the children need. So we have a whole bunch. We've got over 50 helmets to provide kids that need it.
That's good to hear. 4 of my Great Flagstaff, so I just wanted to verify. We're taking care of them. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. I just have 2 questions, and Tyler, you probably can answer the first one. And I'm asking this question because I love to see the partnership with nonprofit organizations teaming up with the state agency to do it. So my assumption is that the Flyers are a recognized 501c3 nonprofit organization?
Yep, that's correct. We're a 501c3.
My second question is, how do you get a 2-year-old on a mountain bike?
So the 2-year-olds are in our program, they're on push bikes without pedals. And so that's part of our program is we have the whole progression. We take those 2-year-olds on push bikes, and then we progress them to pedal bikes all the way up through high school. Now, we started with a certain age profile, and then we've filled in all the ages as our program has grown and expanded now to basically include all youth up through high school.
After this is over and you have the program going on, please send us some pictures so that we can see this in action. I would love to see the 2-year-olds and what that is, as well as the younger ones. I mean, the kids get on their mountain bikes and it's great, but to see kids at that age being introduced to, as Mickey said, that relationship of the environment along with the fitness, I think would be really good. So congratulations to Youth Riders, Inc. for the work that you're doing to promote safety bicycling in our parks. I think that's really great, Tyler. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have one more.
Yes, go ahead, Terry.
One more comment. Tyler, do you promote Arizona State Parks then in your printed material when you receive funding?
Good question.
This is the first time we've ever applied for funding through Arizona State Parks, but we would love to promote that.
Very good, thank you.
Excellent question. Do we do that in traditionally anyway, that they, that any of these grant-funded organizations then make sure that Arizona State Parks are recognized?
Yes, it's in, Mr. Chair, it's in the agreement to recognize anything printed or brochures, state parks recognize that from the program.
All right, thank you, Mickey. All right, any other further questions or comments? Hearing none, there's been a motion
No,
and second, correct?
There has been
No.
a second project.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right, we have two together.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the second project, the Flagstaff Recreation Open Space Program, promotes and provides outdoor environmental protection programs and recreational opportunities for the community, especially for indigenous and historically underrepresented youth. The mission of the Open Space Program is to protect and restore Flagstaff natural, cultural, and scenic resources to enhance recreation and educational opportunities for residents and visitors. The grant will fund a position to recruit, train, and manage volunteers to fulfill the role of rangers on Flagstaff's open space. Last year, there were 332 volunteers who participated in this program. In previous years, the funding was provided by a VISTA program, and that funding has expired. Flagstaff will partner with Willow Bend Environmental Education to provide environmental lessons in the classroom and field trips for every third grader. In addition, the funding will allow the current volunteer program to expand. The funding is for the position for 1 year and has a $5,500 match from a nonprofit. Staff and ARC recommend to fully fund this project, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have, and Robert is also on the phone.
All right, thank you, and welcome, Robert. Any questions or comments on the Open Space Education Program for the City of Flagstaff? Robert, Mickey mentioned that your VISTA funding had expired. Is that an opportunity where you no longer are eligible for funding from AmeriCorps VISTA, or was that just a one-year grant that now it kind of disqualifies you for getting VISTA funds back?
Traditionally, that VISTA program is a 3-year program to develop capacity for entities, and we have exceeded that amount of time by quite a bit. So we are looking for opportunities to be able to continue our work through other means of funding.
Gotcha. Okay, I was just curious because I've been hearing other organizations that have been funded through AmeriCorps and VISTA for a variety of areas, and not only the funding isn't there, but the people representing AmeriCorps and VISTA aren't being placed because of the compensation issue. I mean, they're not getting paid as much as others in the sectors right now. So a lot of people that relied on AmeriCorps and VISTA are struggling right now. So I guess this in a way is to help bail that out, so that's a good thing. Any other questions? Yes, Terry.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. If it's third graders in Flagstaff, is it part of the school day that they participate, or is it weekends, vacation time? How does that work? And are the schools involved in any cost coverage?
This project is in partnership with the Flagstaff Unified School District. So the programming would take place during the school time. In the past, the third grader program, actually, the Unified School District provides a match for grant funds to provide some of the third grade programming, and then our program also contributes to that to be able to enable all third graders in Flagstaff to be offered that program. The educational or programming that we hope to do is to expand it from just third grade to middle school, to include middle school and high school as well.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Robert, I would mention too, Arizona Forward, the old Valley Forward, but now Arizona Forward, does have a category on environmental education awareness. So if this program, the way that you're describing it, is as effective as it is, you should look into it and perhaps submit it as consideration for, I think they call it Criscordia, or just something to that effect.
Yeah.
So the more educational programs we have on the environment, the better. So congratulations with that. All right, now are we ready? Yes. Is there a motion to approve item D5?
Mr. Chair, I move that the Arizona State Parks Board approve funding for the 2022 Heritage Fund Environmental Education Program as follows. Flagstaff Youth Writers, Inc., FLYRS Capacity Build Project in the amount of $49,500, and the City of Flagstaff Parks and Recreation and Open Space Education Project in the amount of $50,000.
There's a motion on the floor from Board Member Johnson. Is there a second?
John Sefton will second.
Motion has been made and
Or
seconded.
Jeff, you second.
Okay, we have 2 seconds, that's even better yet. Thank you, Jeff and John both. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, roll call vote.
Dale Larson.
Aye.
John Sefton.
Aye.
Jeff Buchanan. Debbie Johnson.
Aye.
Sarah King.
Aye.
Terry Palmberg.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the motion passed.
Thank you. And again, to Tyler and Robert, thank you for joining us on this call today, and good luck with your programs.
Thanks very
you
much
so
for
much.
your review. Oh,
Sorry, we'll send you some pictures. Pictures of kids on push bikes are the best.
Looking forward to it. Looking forward to it. And Jeff, we're not laughing at when you make a second. It's just that your voice is going like that, and so it's the interception here is a little funny. So hang with us. All right, item D6, the Chevelon. Is that the correct way to pronounce it?
Yep, Chevelon Canyon.
Chevelon Canyon Emergency and Mitigation Project. Matt Eberhardt, the Off-Highway Vehicle Coordinator. Please go with it.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm Matt Eberhardt, the State Off-Highway Vehicle Coordinator with Arizona State Parks and Trails. Back in 2017, the Arizona State Parks Board granted our Grants and Trails team the authority to award emergency and mitigation projects up to $100,000, primarily for vandalism, fire damage, weather damage, or trails that have become unsafe for the riding public. In this instance, the Arizona Game and Fish Department has requested $98,224 for a mitigation project to protect a cultural site outside of Winslow, Arizona. The existing 4-band fencing has been cut in several instances to allow folks to go up onto a plateau, which is actually a cultural site. It's also there's also been unauthorized trails that are causing damage to habitat for local deer and elk populations. This project is planned to install 1,590 feet of pipe rail fencing to protect the site and the habitat for the animals. The project has been submitted and is currently being reviewed by the State Historic Preservation Office, and that should be completed shortly. Again, these projects are designed to be emergency situations and completed within 6 months. However, in some cases, extensions have been offered based on material needs, and with the pandemic, things are taking longer to come in. So this project is designed to be completed within 6 months, but they are eligible for an extension if they're having issues with that pipe rail material. And I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the project, and there are some additional photos. They gave me a laser pointer today. So there's 2 cultural sites here, and this black line here is where they're going to install the pipe rail fencing. There's been folks that have been driving up in here and doing donuts and things, and then there was a section of fencing along here where they've been driving up onto this cultural site. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That answered my question.
So yeah, again, the black square here highlights the project area. Then you have the red line indicating where they plan to put the pipe rail fencing.
Did Jeff and Sarah get a chance to see these pictures, or are these new for this presentation?
They're in the packet
They are
that
in
was
the
sent out.
packet?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, very good. I just want to make sure, because the visual really helps identify the impact to that cultural
Yeah.
site for the.
And with these, we go up and we do site visits. So these are photos that I actually took. I met with the project coordinator. So we go out and we visit and take photos and discuss the project further, and then we help the applicant through the application process if there's any questions.
Go ahead, John.
Who's responsible for law enforcement in that area?
I believe it's the Arizona Game and Fish Department. They're
Game and
wildlife
Fish.
managers, yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Interesting.
You said that these are cultural resources. Can you define what that means?
They're Indian ruins.
Oh,
I can speak a little bit more about that.
Please do, John.
That is actually one of the Bethel sites that's considered part of the group of Malawi ruins. So this is a 14th century site that had about 500 rooms that's located along the Chevron Creek.
Thanks for being here.
And do you have ongoing communication with the tribal interests in this area so that they are aware of?
I believe Game and Fish does, yes, related to this
Game and
project
Fish.
specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, they kind of have to be vague because they don't want people knowing where these sites are, so he
Well,
didn't
they-
give me much information, so thank you for the insight on that.
That's exactly the point I'm trying to make, is because I know even here down in the valley, we have that sensitivity
Mhm.
with resources that we don't want hikers or off-road vehicles, people going into it, so.
Yeah, so this photo here, this barbed wire fencing had been cut, and you can kind of see the tracks. It's starting to heal, but they had ridden up on top here, and you can see where they've been just kind of tearing it up, unfortunately, so,
Wow.
Satellite even shows the damage.
yeah.
Do you know if Game and Fish has a similar protocol or policy that's been put in place to have funding for these emergency types of situations?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can certainly look into that.
Be good to know. I know this is an information item, there isn't any action per se, so now that you've advised us, what's the next steps? Are there funds available, or do we not have to worry about that?
Yeah, so basically this is an information only item, but yes, we do have $6 million available in the off-highway vehicle fund, and those funds can be designated towards emergency mitigation projects like this.
And they would go to Game and Fish?
Yep, so these funds will go, the $98,224 after SHPO reviews, they'll basically submit invoicing to us, and then we'll issue them the funds to be able to execute the project. And again, they have to be completed within 6 months, barring any, delays in materials. They may request a project extension, but we'll certainly provide updates as these projects continue, and as the pipe rail fencing is installed, we can provide an update to the board.
Is this technically park property?
No,
So who owns the property?
I can look into that. I believe it's managed by Game and Fish.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, it was purchased a long time ago for the purposes of wildlife,
Right.
wildlife habitat. And so that, they do have funding, it's different, but when it comes to OHV impacts, that's where our ability to come in and help them. So, yeah, it's a really neat area.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't doubt it. I was just interesting in the intersection of the two organizations, and with Vice Chair's comment about who provides the policing for it, et cetera, so.
Well, the beauty of this is we can strike right now while there's an issue. State land is going to take advantage, it has taken advantage of all kinds. Whereas in this case, this is a federal aid purchase property. You have to now go to the federal government, Fish and Wildlife Service, and get that approval, and so by the time you get those approvals for that funding, the damage is really done. So our guys we're right there, and this is so invaluable to addressing issues before they become raging wildfires, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's really a great opportunity.
With that, that fund balance, are they not at risk of being swept or other things along those lines? Is that a rollover funding source?
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we feel solid that will retain.
But there's
in the
always a
department?
risk.
Okay.
I don't think this-
Yeah, probably
per
not
se
this
for
year,
sure.
but I think
Probably
it's
not this year.
these kinds of emergencies that if we had a growing balance that sat there and we had no projects
Right.
and weren't, getting that out, then yeah, I'd really get worried. But these, I think we're gonna see a lot more of this.
Yeah.
As OHV recreation continues, people are getting squeezed more and more into smaller areas where they shouldn't go. as you well know.
I
I know you deal with that in your day job too, so. Yeah, I think if we can keep these, our guys do a great job at educating folks that this fund is available, and getting them the information, helping them through the grant process, getting that done on the ground. I think it's all around, we're in a really good spot right now with where we are with OHV, for OHV funding for sure.
Matt, you mentioned SHPO's doing their review investigation right now.
Correct.
When is that expected to be?
I believe within the next couple weeks.
Oh, okay, and what comes after that?
At that point, we'll establish a project agreement with the grantee, and then they'll move forward with getting all the materials in place and getting the invoices and then exchanging of funds so that they can execute the project.
So will that fund allocation come back to us then at another board meeting to approve or not?
No, these, again, in 2017, the board granted our team the authority to award up to $100,000, so long as we do like we're doing now with providing updates on what those projects are and when they come forward.
Well, it sounds like time's of the essence, so.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, give us another update when you
Absolutely.
When you do it.
Mr. Chair, Jeff Buchanan.
Yes, Jeff, go ahead.
It's not related specifically to this project. Obviously, that's great news. As Bob laid out, we can act and we can act now, and I encourage us to do so. But it's a broader question that has come up several times in the past for me. This probably falls into the future agenda item, but I'd like a more holistic rundown of the role of the role of Arizona State Parks and Trails and the interaction with other state agencies, specifically when it comes to funding. Because we've talked a number of times about game and fish projects. I know we have different funding streams, but I'd like to know what our responsibilities of the board when it comes to these projects. You know, remember a year or so ago, I asked the question why Parks and Trails had to pay for a lease to State Land Commission for access for a trail, and that still hasn't been answered. So I'd like an ending of the interaction specifically between state agencies when it comes to funding.
Very good, Jeff, and duly noted, and we'll mention that too then on future agenda items. I think that's an excellent one, so thank you for that. And it has been an ongoing discussion here at the board meeting with federal agencies as well on it, so appreciate your point on that. All right, any other questions or comments on this informational item? Matt, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that very much. All right. Next, we have Brittany to bring us up to date on the park fees study that's happening right now.
Good morning, members of the board. For the record, Brittany Hudson, Legislative Liaison for Parks. So just a quick update on the rules. I know I did send the updated draft rules, but so there's a new executive moratorium that the governor releases every year. And I asked for a request last year to open up the rules. But I'm going to ask for an amended, just to amend the request to include the new moratorium, so we can open up the rules. I'm sure that it'll be approved, but I want to make sure that I do everything correctly. So I'm going to ask for just amend our request with and cite the new executive moratorium and see if we can get approved. So I just wanted to update the board on that. The draft right now can always be amended, and we can always change that. So once I receive an amended or another approval, I want to go ahead and I want to speak with Nancy just to make sure that everything is on the up and up, and then go ahead and file a notice with the Secretary of State that we are actually opening up our draft rules. And that just puts the public on notice that we are opening up the rules and that we're working on the rules. And then after that, there's a chance to put our rules draft on our website so we can open it up for public comment for 30 days, I believe. And then we would post that draft with the Secretary of State's office. There's still time for things to change or for the draft to be amended. So we have a little bit of time. So there are still chances for our drafts to be amended. So I will be updating every month on kind of the progress and the process. But the first thing that I need to do is just to amend the request with the new executive moratorium so we can have the approval under that this year instead of last year. Any
So
questions on
Is
that?
that an administrative amendment? I mean, it doesn't take the action of any group, like from the governor or the state legislature? How
Well,
does
it-
that amendment actually formally happen, I guess is my
Sure,
question.
sure, Mr. Chair. So I will, what you do is you just write a letter to the policy advisor at the governor's office. So whoever our policy advisor is with, for parks, I would send that letter request over to her. And I don't know what they do over at the governor's office to approve, but it usually the approval or rejection usually comes back from that policy advisor. So the governor's office has to approve it or deny. I've usually seen the approvals. I haven't seen any denials, but you never know. So, but that's the way that you request. You just write a letter. You say what type of rulemaking you would like to do, why we're doing it. You cite the statute, and then you send it over, and they will approve or deny the request.
Okay.
So.
All right. Any other thoughts, questions? Hearing none? All right, Brittany, while you have the podium, the next one, which, yeah, you've got, there's a lot going on, and all I kept seeing was Arizona State Parks Board, Arizona State Parks Board, Arizona State Parks Board, all throughout it. So either our plate's gonna get larger or what? So why don't you give us an update?
Well, the update I wanted to give, I know I did go over some of the rules last month some of the bills last month at the board meeting. But I wanted to just go over the newer ones that I didn't go over last month and kind of where they are now in the process. So if you want to take a look on page 1, I don't believe we went over House Bill 2371, state agencies cash payment acceptance. So that's simple. It requires a state agency or agent of the state to accept cash or money orders to pay that agency. This bill went through last year, or it went through the House last year. It stopped at the Senate. So right now it's doing the same thing. It passed through committee in the House, but hasn't moved any further.
Okay.
You guys see it? Okay, I just want to make sure. Are you guys seeing it?
Jeff
Is it
and
in there?
Sarah, this is House Bill 2371 on cash payment acceptance. Do you have that information in your packet?
Yep, I've got that.
Sure, yes, we do.
Okay.
Okay, great. Okay, the next one, House Bill 2398, Arizona Dude Ranches Historic Designation. So this is a new concept from Representative Dunn, which establishes an Arizona Dude Ranch Heritage Trail Program and authorizes the State Parks Board to designate dude ranches for inclusion in this program if it meets certain criteria. We would have to come up with, well, I believe the criteria is in the bill, but we have to approve the dude ranches and make sure that it can meet the criteria to go through this new program. It requires the applicant to pay for the cost of designing and creating plaques. Stipulates the board allows additions or modifications to a designated dude ranch if its original character is preserved. So there's a lot in here. So this is a brand new program that would come through State Parks Board. I'm sure it does have to be funded or have some money to it. So that would be either a question for the governor's office and the legislature, or they may have to come back and create another bill next session for appropriation. But that's something to watch out for. And that bill did go through committee February 7th.
Just, I mean, I know Wickenburg used to be the dude ranch capital of Arizona when they had, what, 19 or some incredible number. How many dude ranches are there in Arizona? I didn't think there were that many anymore.
Mr. Chair, I don't believe so. When I spoke with Representative Dunn, I believe he said about 9 or so dude ranches. I'm not sure on that number, but it wasn't a lot.
Mr. Chair, if I could, we are actually just now starting to work, there is an official Arizona Dude Ranch Association, which we did not know until recently, within the last 6 months. We're working with them to help market their properties because they're all a little bit different. But I think there's about 9 in the association, and then there's probably another 6 out there, so there's less than 20. But we're doing some marketing with that organization right now. We just did a video that we isn't even in draft yet, that's of 3 different dude ranches in 3 different areas. So there's a lot also in southern Arizona, which is interesting. But it's primarily southern Arizona and kind of the Wickenburg area.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
question.
Mr. Chair,
What's
we
the,
have,
go ahead.
Sarah, go ahead, and
I
then
was just
Terry.
gonna comment that we have,
I was just going to comment that we have 2 dude ranches down here in the Altar Valley, and it's definitely part of the economy in the area and bringing people in and engaging them with the natural landscape as well.
Okay, good to know. Thank you, Sarah. Terry?
What's the value of the designation? I know historic home value, it has some impact on your taxes. Is there any value to being designated a historic dude ranch? I mean, why are we doing this?
So, Mr. Chair and Board Member Palmberg, I am not quite sure. I know we have historic designation through SHPO, so SHPO can historically designate dude ranches if they so want to. But from what I hear, I don't know if that was the route that they wanted to go. I know that the purpose of this bill was to really get dude ranches to become, so people can come to Arizona instead of going to a hotel. They can go to a dude ranch and stay there and do everything on the dude ranch. And so it's really just promotion more so for dude ranches than coming to Arizona and staying in a hotel or an Airbnb or something.
Thank you. It's just, I think it just brings sort of a sense of, old Arizona heritage and all the areas. Certainly now we can refer to people as dudes in a different way than has been the vernacular here in the last several years. So I guess that's a good thing just by itself.
Sensitivity training.
That's right. But, well, anyway, so.
Mr. Chair, Jeff Buchanan.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Just the last sentence kind of caught my attention. Requires this, if passed, this will require the board to produce marketing and promotional materials to map designated dude ranches.
Yeah, and that's what I think the question about, will there be funding related to this? I mean, if the board and the agency are now required to do the marketing and promotion, and of course working with Debbie and tourism. So I think those are our unanswered questions that we would like to have Brittany out for the record, just to know how is that going to be followed through.
Mr. Chair, so that is a question that's in the air right now. That is, I have spoke with our policy advisor at the governor's office, and the governor's office does know that this bill is moving forward, and does understand that there has to be some type of money involved or an appropriation, and they know about the bill, and they also know that the Office of Tourism has helped with marketing and things like that. So, governor's office and we're connected, and we know. That's just a question, and that's an unanswered question at this point.
But I think,
Chair, if I could.
Go ahead.
Member Buchanan, this is Debbie Johnson. We have been working with them for a little while now, but what they wanted to provide, they wanted specific funding from the legislature last year to go to tourism. We fought that because we keep getting all these little teeny buckets of money that then you have to report out. And it was basically $100,000. But we said we'll do the work to market the organization. This association has hired a lobbying firm. And that's, I think, where some of this is coming from. So they're trying to get money. We agreed to provide the money without getting a direct source from the legislature because it's just another reporting structure. But we agreed to do $100,000. So we have wine money that we do. They wanted dude ranch money. So what we now have money for PIR, for the raceway. So it's all these little buckets of money that are happening. But in part, it's because they understand the value of promotion. We're willing to take on the promotion part without having, I think the designation itself is good to designate them because then it gives them another marketing opportunity. But I think unless the legislature is going to put specific money behind it, Arizona Office of Tourism will continue to market them. And we're happy to say that. And I did just talk to Alex, and she said she's in contact with them, with Carly as well on this.
all right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Am I allowed to add something? I'm just here shadowing Debbie today, but I am in Tempe leadership, and I just wanted to say that I've learned recently that when you designate something as a historic site, it also preserves that history so that when you go into doing new construction, you can't damage or tear down that historic part of the building. So it preserves that so that if anything new has been built, you can change it. But that's just something I learned recently, if that helps at all. That maybe the Dude Ranch, if it's designated as historic, then they're able to preserve portions of the ranch to prevent them from making changes to it.
that, just to add on to that, so it's gonna go to SHPO, I mean,
Who would have to?
that's
The
where,
designation.
that's the bucket where we put it in for state parks?
No. The designation of a historic property, of a dude ranch or anything, SHPO already has that ability to designate. Dude ranches can be designated now. That's kind of their typical, but when you talk about promotions and marketing and those are the things, I think that's what Debbie was getting at, is that's another pot of money. And really, it's in tourism's
Right.
you know,
Wheelhouse.
expertise and wheelhouse versus ours. So I think the sponsor, we met with him, he's very well aware. Doesn't mean the bill's not gonna keep moving, but it's particularly if you start attaching budget to it, it's gonna get balled up with everything else. So it's got a long way to go, but they're aware of all of those.
And there are challenges when you're historic. You better
Absolutely.
not try
Careful
and,
what you ask
I live in a historic neighborhood and have a home there, and you can't do diddly to it. You have choices anytime you do anything, and those dude ranches better understand that.
It's another good point.
Your home will have to become a dude ranch.
We already called her dude.
Thank you, Brittany. Probably more time than we need to
That's
on this,
okay.
but it was an intriguing one. So what else do you have on your?
That's why I do it.
Okay.
So, just to point out, the next few just passed through the legislature February 2nd, governmental entities mask requirements. That's pretty straightforward. And the COVID-19 vaccination requirements is also straightforward. Public records point of contact passed through February 2nd as well. And that's simple. I know a few agencies have an issue with this, but I don't know if it's going to pass or move through and continue. But it states that an entity is subject to public records request shall provide the name, telephone number, and email address of the employee who's authorized to provide information requested. So,
Actually, I'm surprised that doesn't happen anyway. I mean, usually a public records request is requested and the AG's office provides the guidance for whomever agency to go through that, right? I mean, I didn't realize you need another law for that, but, I mean, you're doing it now, right, Bob? I mean,
Oh, absolutely.
Should be,
yeah, so, yeah, okay.
Every agency is.
Right, all right.
the next one is 2753. And I'm also doing the ones, if I skip over anything, I'm just doing the ones that have moved or I know will be moving. 2753, executive session, public meetings. This just adds, it's really minor, we do this now, but it just adds that if an executive session is scheduled, the notice must include a specific provision of that executive session statute, to which the legal advice pertains. So there's an entire statute on executive sessions. They just have to provide exactly like why we're going into executive session from that statute.
And so we'll rely on Nancy to help us with that if it gets passed, to make sure it's done properly on the
Absolutely.
agenda, so, all right.
The next one, 2789, this is the Arizona Trail Association bill, requires the Arizona State Parks Board to administer the Arizona Trail Fund. And the money's in the fund, which we already do, but it is for, right now, we do it for the purpose of constructing and maintaining the trail, but now it's going to include maintaining and improving water sources, signs, gates, and public access. So that is coming up next week on appropriation. So that one hasn't passed committee, but I'm sure it will be moving forward. The next one, 1298, that's another mask mandate. It passed February 10th. Senate Bill 1346, vaccination one, it passed February 14th. The Off-Highway Vehicle Fund, Senate Bill 1377, I believe I talked about this last month, but there was an amendment to the bill and it requires a person to complete an educational course in OHV safety and environmental ethics before being issued an OHV indicia, I believe that's how you say it. Requires a person to provide a customer with OHV safety and environmental education materials before renting or selling an OHV to the customer. So that bill passed February 8th. The next one is,
Brittany,
oh, sorry.
just if you don't mind, on that
Sure.
item, and since Matt's here too, do we track, I mean, this one says not more than 10% to fund staff support to plan that. Is that currently the same thing, or is that a new requirement that the agency can't spend more than 10% of staff time towards it? And if so, how do we track that now?
So currently, of the off-highway vehicle decal dollars that we receive, we're allowed to use 12% for our administrative costs, employee-related expenses, our travel, fleet vehicles, maintenance, those types of things, as far as us administering the program. So that would drop that to 10% instead of the 12.
Is that will that be a challenge for you having it? No. Is there was there some logic behind dropping it from 12 to 10, or did they even know it was 12, or?
I asked the same question, Mr. Chairman, where 10% comes from, because it's in SLIF, it's in OHV, is there some science behind it? I don't know.
Okay.
It seems like 10% is the number of the day when it comes to grant administration, but yeah, that's really the only impact that we saw was going from 12 to 10. Our folks are really good at saving money, and you know, with off-ag would be contribute to this, our staff time, you know, Matt's field time, for example, you know, those kinds of things. We'll make it work. We can make it work.
The reason I bring it up is because we're extremely supportive of Mickey and Matt, and they go out all around the state.
Yeah.
They do these sessions, they do these info things. I don't know if you track that in the overall cost of these areas, but my guess is they spend more than 10% of their time working. I guess you just record 10%, and then the rest is just
General fund.
yeah.
Right.
Okay. Jen?
No, I was thinking kind of the same thing, that this grant bucket is a lot different than I think a lot of other grant available, and how to administrate, you know, just the sheer getting out and being around and observing and validating is a little bit different than I think a lot of grant structures. So as long as there's this support from the department itself, and that's just a 10% administrative reallocation.
Yeah, right.
Nothing we need to lobby for then.
Mickey, Matt, the next paragraph, it mentions that priority is going to be given to state land leases for non-federal projects, for projects where federal entities work with state and local entities. Does that make a dramatic change into what you're doing currently now, or is that consistent with what's been going on?
We haven't seen a ton of state trust land leasing grant requests, but that shouldn't negatively impact the overall pool of money. The current legislation also states 10% going to law enforcement specific. I think we're already hitting that threshold, so that 10% additional going to lands shouldn't have a negative effect on our overall grant program. That would still be 80% of off-highway vehicle dollars for other projects and priorities, so I don't see it.
Will that affect your matrix on the point totals for these things, since a higher priority is being placed on our own state type, or no?
No, they'd be awarded based on the same scoring criteria.
All right. Okay, Brittany?
Okay. Senate Bill 1405, I'm almost finished. Senate Bill 1405, State Parks Board volunteers fingerprinting. So this is a bill that our agency has pushed through the legislature. And it just allows us, the State Parks Board, to require volunteers who collect fees, interact with children or vulnerable adults to submit a full set of fingerprints to the board to just be background checked, because we can't do that now. And that has to go through, that has to be in statute or an executive order before we can do that. So we have to put it in statute in order to background check. So if you're working with children or collecting fees, we're allowed to background check.
Who picks up the cost of those background checks?
So we'll be working with DPS to administer everything, and I believe that we were going to take the cost.
Yeah,
we were going to take the.
You'll pick it up? Okay. Yay.
The next few are probably not moving. Senate Bill 1596, off-highway vehicles. This is just creates a off-highway vehicle study committee at the legislature. And a study committee is really just an advisory committee. They don't vote on any bills. It's usually during the summer, fall months when they have these study committees, and they make recommendations to the legislature on OHV issues. So it'll include a state parks board, director, game and fish director, state land director, and state Department of Transportation director, as well as many other people I didn't include because it's a long bill, but it's fairly straightforward. And that is it for legislation so far. For next month, I don't believe that we will be getting any more bills on the sheet, but they will be updated as far as how far they move through the process. The committees are over next week. As far as, House committees are hearing House bills, that will be over next week. Senate bills hearing Senate bills will be over next week, and then they'll switch. The bills will switch and go to the different houses. And then we'll start all over again. So, any questions?
Just curiosity on Senate Bill 1559, and maybe Bob, it's to you. Is there some support for the idea that $10 million is going to be reserved in 23-24 for the Heritage Fund?
Well, that and 1270 is the same thing and says 3 million.
Yeah.
We got one at 3 and one at 10.
Because you got the House and Senate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chair, I know that 1270 is moving. I'm sure that will be included as a budget request.
Right.
Senate Bill 1559 is a minority bill, so I don't know. I know that there is requests to have a 10 million for the Heritage Fund. I'm just not exactly sure that it's going to move.
But it's a minority.
But it's a minority. And then it just depends on budget negotiations. But I believe this bill will probably end up in budget negotiations.
Okay,
So.
all right. Any other questions from board members on that? Brittany, thank you so much for tracking all this. It's great to
You're
see
welcome.
the State Parks Board so
So
fluently
busy.
in all these areas. And anyway, so next on the agenda, I believe, is Chad, right? So we have as a matter of practice now each month, one of our esteemed park managers are coming in to give us a highlight of what's going on. Chad, thank you for clarifying that on the cultural resources for that either issue. But please introduce yourself and tell us all about your park.
Well, Chairman and board members, thank you for the invite for me to speak about the park today. My name is Chad Munier. I am the park manager at Homology State Park. So Homology is kind of a unique park in our system. It's really the only park that was established specifically to protect archaeological resources. We have a lot of archaeological resources at our other parks, but Homology was set up specifically for that purpose. And Homology is the name is a Hopi name. Made up of two words. So you can see that there's in the slide here, there's a glottal stop there. Traditionally in Hopi, it would be pronounced Homology. Homol is a small hill or butte, and like we see down there, and Ovi means place of. So literally it means place of the little hills or place of the little buttes. And Ovi, if you look at a map, you look up at the Hopi mesas, and you see a lot of those villages ending in OVI. Same deal. So this is the Hopi place name for this area. This is an area where ancestors of the Hopi lived. Our main focus is on our Pueblo period, but we do have use of this little Colorado River Valley all the way back into what we call the Paleo-Indian period, so about 10,000 years ago. So next slide, please. So the reason that Homology came about was we have, as you can see, a history of looting that was happening at these sites. Some may say that when Jesse Walter Fuchs, who was the first archaeologist who came to these sites, and he's the one who named them Homology 1, 2, 3, and 4, that he was kind of, this was early in archaeology, so a lot of his archaeological study is kind of frowned upon by modern archaeologists. He was more of an ethnographer. He tied oral histories with the Hopi to what they are today. But from the time Fuchs was all the way up until the park was established, we had a history of digging going on at these sites. This is our main Pueblo site, an aerial view of it. If you look, you can closely see it looks like, almost looks like bombs that were dropped on the site. These are looters' holes. So this was really the hardest hit of the Homology sites, Homology 2. It was also our largest Pueblo. But because of that, they looked they were looking at what was the best way to establish protection for these sites. So, next slide. So, in 1980, the governor established the Archaeology Advisory Group, and they came up with and eventually decided that a state park was the best way to protect these sites along the Little Colorado River. So we got a little bit of notoriety in 1982, November edition of the National Geographic magazine. A picture very much like that previous one that I just showed you was basically the middle fold of the magazine. The whole magazine was all about Southwest native cultures. And then there was a whole article about degradation of these sites. So from all of that, a park was established. One thing I want to point out on here, though, is the 1984, the Homology Research Program from the Arizona State Museum, they started their archaeological study of these sites. And originally that was only meant to be a 10-year program. They just ended their study of the site in 2018. So it lasted a lot longer than what they had originally planned. And the reason for that is there's a lot more archaeology out there. When they did their original survey of this site, there was over 300 different archaeological sites. That doesn't mean 300 pueblos, but it does mean 300 sites that were marked within a certain distance from the Little Colorado River. So we were established by law in 1986. That allowed us to acquire the park and establish it. And from that time period, it took us actually a little bit longer than what we would have hoped to acquire a lot of that land. Some of that was ranching concerns. So it wasn't until 1993 that we actually opened as a park to the public. And the park was open all the way up until 2010, and that's when we were one of the unfortunate parks that closed due to the budget shortfall. So it was at that time that a lot of our parks became partner parks. We became a partner park with the Hopi tribe, and they came in and had funding for the park. They actually funded one of our staff members at the park, and we reopened in March of 2011. So as part of that funding, the Hopi asked that we actually drop ruins from the park name. You can see that it actually was Homology Ruins State Park. They actually asked that we drop ruins from the name because among the Hopi, they consider the word ruins something that's dead, no longer significant to who they are today. And that's not how the Hopi really think of this.
Yeah.
I always like to use the analogy in my talks that if you're in your kitchen cooking dinner and then you're done with dinner and you go off to your living room, you haven't abandoned your kitchen, you're just not there at the moment. And that's kind of how the Hopi think about these things. The time factor doesn't really matter. It's just that they're not currently there. Doesn't mean that it's not important to who they are today. So they ended up funding about 5 years. And I don't remember the exact dollar amount of what it was, but it was, I believe it was over $150,000 that they put in to operate the park at the time. So I mentioned earlier that we do have use of this Little Colorado River Valley, and that's what was drawing people in was the river. all the way back into the Paleo-Indian period. But we don't start to really see settlements here until about 620. So these are our settlement periods that we have at Homoloby. They're all kind of a little bit different, but if you think about where do we fit as far as sites in other areas, the interesting thing about Homoloby is when they were building pueblos in other areas in the Southwest, we were still building pit houses at Homoloby. So it actually grew quite a bit later. A lot of what we see at Homoloby too in this late period was you can see at the Hopi Mesas today. So everybody comes to the park and asks, well, what did these really look like? Because these are ruins. We say if you go up to Hopi or you look at the pictures of these Hopi villages, it's very much the same way as that, designed the same way. So this is our early period, the early pit houses that we had. These early pit houses are round in shape, and pit houses all would have had a roof entrance. Some of them would have had actually a ramp down into them. But during this period, it appeared that people didn't actually live here year-round. They were just using it seasonally. So on to the next one. And then in this middle period, we saw a change. And in that change, this is an excavation of a pit house. They're actually square pit houses, and they tended to live there year-round, and we also started to see large community rooms, kind of like what became kivas later on. That wasn't something we saw in the early period. And then the next one. So this is the late period. We have 7 villages that are considered part of the Homoloby group. There's actually 11, 4 smaller ones, but 7 main villages that are part of this group, all along the Little Colorado River. So the villages of Homoloby 1, 2, 3, and 4 are all contained within the park. These other villages of Cottonwood Creek, Jackrabbit, and Chevelon, those are all outside the park boundaries. Interesting thing about the bill to establish the park, some of these areas actually were included at that time, but they did not, the land was not acquired, and we have just the 4,500 acres that we managed with Homoloby 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is a picture of Homoloby 2. If you see any pictures of Homoloby, it's going to be Homoloby 2 that you see a picture of. It's the only one that has open, stabilized structures. So that is the Homoloby 2 Pueblo that was a 1,400 room village. Homoloby 1 was a little over 1,000 rooms, and then the 4 was our smallest and earliest of them, only had about 200 to 250 rooms. Well, actually 3 is smaller than 4, but 3 fits in between 4, 3, 2, and 1. But those numbers are just designation by Fuchs, the order that he visited those sites in. So have you probably heard the pandemic has caused large increases in visitation to our parks. So you can see in 2021 what that did for us. We were having steady increases there. We had a little bit of downturn in 2020, but we're about 325,000 for last fiscal year. So it wasn't really that many years ago that we were struggling to get above 100,000. Now we're at about 325,000. So.
Let me just out of that curiosity, because with Debbie here as well. Outside of the pandemic, pretty much kind of unraveling and people going again, what caused the high increase in visitation since it's such a huge spike? It's pretty much due to the pandemic, just because people are not staying in hotels as much. They're looking to get out camping more. I've talked to people that sold RVs and said
they can't keep on site, so they've sold a lot more RVs, so there's just that many more people. And I think as more people use the other parks in our system, campgrounds are full. We have a campground that used to have more space. Now it tends to be full during the spring and fall. But that has pushed a lot of people to our park, and also just the awareness that oh yeah, there's these parks out here that I want to go visit during the pandemic, and I think that has pushed that to that amount. But yeah, I don't know that that's sustainable. We'll see what happens here, but it is a pretty marked increase.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
In 2020, were you closed at all in 2020? Because I know
We were not closed at all.
Okay.
We had some changes in the way we operate. Our visitor center was closed for a time, but the park was open.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is our fiscal year to date. So as big an increase as 2021 was, we're actually on pace to break that this year. So you can see that we're quite a lot ahead of what we were last year, which was by far a record year. And then our visitation, you can see that spike in 2021. We were having kind of gradual increases, which parks tend to have. And then we see that spike again with visitation in 2021. So we're about 35,000 in visitors. I've worked at the park for 22 years now. So I can remember years where we had 12,000 people. So that's quite a lot different than what we have in the past. Yes?
I'm glad you mentioned how long you've been there. Congratulations. How many staff do you have there?
Right now we have 3 full-time staff, and then when we start the season, we'll have a seasonal too.
And that, based on the number, are you having
Well, you know,
difficulties
the
with
thing
that?
is, a lot of that number is in our campground.
Okay.
A lot of that number is into our campground, so we do rely on volunteers, camp host volunteers, to help with a lot of that. So that has kind of eased that as far as on staff. So this is where we're at fiscal year to date for 2022. So we can say we're quite a bit ahead of last year, which was a record year again. So you can see what the pandemic has done to our visitation at Homology.
And Mr. Chair, these numbers match exactly what we're seeing in terms of website inquiries and what Google terms that people are seeking in tourism. It's all about outdoor activity and things to do outdoors. And we've seen a substantial increase, more than double, for where we were prior to the pandemic.
Well,
More than double.
More than double.
And
And
we
I think
getting more
Debbie-
than double budget, Bob?
Just in terms of inquiries.
I think to your point though,
Actually has to.
technology has really helped. I mean, people are using
Absolutely.
websites and they're going to your agency and to state parks and they're finding this information out to, not just because of the escape from the pandemic, but now word of mouth, that everything is just out there. So my guess is you're gonna have to be sustainable,
Right.
Chad, because it's not going to dip down again unless there's some other kind of a catastrophe.
So, yeah, Nick. So, just to touch on some of the threats and issues that we deal with, because of the increase in visitation, of course, and a lot of that going to the campground, a lot of those people who use our campground, since we're right on I-40, they don't necessarily go visit the park. They use our campground and then they get on their way on I-40. But we are having more people go out to our sites. One of the issues that we were dealing with is just more issues with educating people about archaeological sites, how to act at these archaeological sites. We've had more incidences of having to tell people that no, you can't walk in that place or you can't pick that up, that sort of thing, because of these increases in visitors. So that picture over there, that's some of the pottery types. We have over 30 different pottery types at these Homology sites, and you know, people tend to like to pile them into piles out there. So that's one of our ongoing issues. Up there, we've got a picture of the Little Colorado River. The river is always a threat to the park.
it was a threat to these prehistoric people that were living here. So much that at Homology 1, which is right on the river, they built a long, what archaeologists think was a flood wall to try to keep waters out of their village. So the Little Colorado River can flood severely. The last 500-year flood episode we had was back in 1993. We've had some smaller flood episodes since then. Just recently, through the ARPA money, the Navajo County and the city of Winslow has passed funding finally for a long project with the Winslow Levee, which is on the other side of the river from the park. So any work that's done on that side of the park will push water towards us. We've been kind of part of that project for, gosh, at least 12 years now, just to make sure that they don't forget about us over on the other side of the river. And then it's kind of hard to see, but we've got ranching interest in the area. So we're one down fence away from cows getting into archaeological sites. We only own about 2 sections of the 4,500 acres. The rest is leased state trust land. So that's something that we're always dealing with. And here in the middle, we have, because of the age of these and erosion, stabilization is always something that needs to be done. This is a stabilization crew that was all volunteer, that was through the Arizona Archaeology Society, that came in and did some stabilization for us back in 2010. So because we're a cultural park, and we do rely on our relationships with our partners quite a bit. For those of you who don't know, we do have a 14-inch telescope and observatory up there. This was a partnership with the City of Winslow and the Little Colorado River Valley Astronomy Club to make use of the night skies that we have out there. Unfortunately, because of COVID, those got suspended for a while, and when they tried to pick them back up, they found that the telescope mount that they used for the telescope has died. Just recently, the City of Winslow just passed funding to fund that, but now they're dealing with supply issues to try to replace that. So once that all gets solved, we will be able to pick those star parties up again.
There's the observatory.
So we have, I don't know if anybody you knew, but we did have a exhibit that the Homology Research Program did after their years of excavating at the site. It was at the Arizona State Museum for about 1.5 years. And then after that, it moved up to Winslow. Since we don't have the space for it at our park, it moved up to the La Posada Hotel. So in partnership with the Winslow Arts Trust, the Old Trails Museum, the Hopi Tribe, we helped with that exhibit, which just ended its run. It was only supposed to be there for 1 year because of the pandemic. They extended it for another year. And we've always had a close tie with the Hopi. They were important in the park being established in the first place. They were important in reopening us in 2011, so we still maintain those ties, and also to the Arizona State Museum. They're an important partner in the park. So that is kind of a brief overview of the park. Is any questions from the board?
Thank you, Chad. Thoughts, comments? It looks great, and thanks for the history lesson. Are the pit houses on your property very similar to the pit houses down here, say at Pueblo Grande and those areas? Is there a similarity?
Well, I mean, the pit house is kind of a pit house because it's a hole in the ground with a post beam structure. So shape is usually, and size are usually the differentiation between those. I don't know specifically what the pit houses at Pueblo Grande are, so I can't answer that specifically, but I would say pit houses tend to be fairly
right. I mean,
ubiquitous. Yeah.
Just curiosity. And you mentioned the Archaeological Society brings volunteers out. You mentioned that they finally finished their work. Was it 2017?
2018, that's the Homology Research Program, yeah.
Okay, so is there any need for increased research or funding from an archaeological perspective? Or
Right now, I mean, they've got, well, let's see, they've about 33 years of excavating that they're in the synthesize the data stage of that. So there is, I mean, there's probably a chance for what homology has really become for University of Arizona and the State Museum is a training center for field work for archaeology.
Okay.
So a lot of undergrads, a lot of graduate students have come through homology, and that's where they cut their teeth, so to speak, to learn archaeology.
Then the last question I have, Chad, you mentioned the looting that took place and that terrible picture of all those holes written. So based on the archaeology, were they able to recover significant resources for
actually they did.
Storage and repatriation and whatever?
Yeah, they, what they found when they came in is that looters tend to be kind of lazy. So they found out once they got past that damaged layer, which was 3 to 5 feet, there was still a lot of resources there to be had. A lot of what was excavated from the Homology Research Program is curated at the State Museum. We just don't have the room and facilities for that. But yeah, a lot of that is at the State Museum.
Okay. All right. Any other thoughts? Chad, thank you very much for this. Very good. We need to come up and see that. That's a wonderful presentation.
All right, thank you.
All right. Okay, future agenda items. I know Board Member Jeff Buchanan had talked about the interaction between various agencies in terms of shared responsibilities. Are there any other agenda items for Kelly to jot down? Okay. if there
Mr.
are-
Chair, Jeff Buchanan with one more.
Sure, go ahead, Jeff.
And this, I know, is at the risk of sounding like a broken record, because you know how I'm always lobbying to get one of our meetings away from, at one of our parks outside of Maricopa County. And I was just looking ahead at the calendar. We have a board meeting scheduled for 21st of April. The next day is Earth Day. It seems to me like there's a good opportunity to leverage that. We just passed a couple of projects for Flagstaff today. We had in the past talked about visiting Reardon Mansion, so that's a possibility. Or we could go to Catalina State Park and talk about recovery after the Bighorn Fire, and while we're in Tucson, visit the school that we had promised we'd visit. There's a lot of options out there, and I just want to put a suggestion on the table for you.
Thank you, Jeff, and thank you for reminding us about Earth Day. That's excellent. Yeah, one way or the other, we're going to get out, whether it's for an actual board meeting or a field trip or something with board members. So appreciate that very much, and we'll continue to twist the arms of our colleagues here on the board to make that happen.
I
Go
have
ahead,
a
Terry.
question related to that.
Sure.
Is it really about our board members, or is it technology driven?
I think it's both, right, Bob?
Yeah, certainly, this is tough for, I'll speak for Director Johnson and Commissioner Atkins and myself. During the legislative session, it's very hard to get out of town for an entire day, because Thursday, Friday, maybe, but I would say after the session, things will get really wide open. But yeah, if we're gonna broadcast, Vince back there, we're gonna need IT support. We're gonna need a place to house it for the public to come in. So, I mean, it's all things it's not insurmountable. We can get it done. A lot of our parks don't have a room this size that we can do this unless you wanna do it outside. So there are some logistics. I've done this my entire career. We've gone on the road, and I'm really supportive of it. But I think it's when the session is in right now, it's going to get really tough particularly to ask Director Johnson to go and Lisa Atkins to go. So we may lose some.
What months are most advantageous for?
Probably summer, June, maybe July. We've had sessions
July?
usually over by
Then we
by
need to
June.
do it in July.
Hopefully, if it's not, then something's going wrong.
We
but-
don't have budgets.
Right, right.
You
So-
mentioned the possibility, would a Friday work out if we were to change the meeting date and do it on a Friday
Well,
instead?
they're still in session.
I will
but-
just say for us, that tends to be like a day where they'll call and say they want to meet with
Oh,
us.
right,
off-
before
So
Monday.
they're not in hearings, they're not in,
Yeah.
but they want to meet one-on-one about an issue.
Okay.
And the problem is, Brittany, I'll tell you, you just never know.
Right, no.
Let's be
full-
ready for
But so
anything.
if we would do a July, could we meet instead of, do a tour, but could we meet at like Flagstaff University in a
Sure.
room that has the technical setup, or
Or
in
the Reardon House. We
Tucson,
could meet in the
or in
Reardon House,
Tucson
right?
that has
Yeah.
the technical
Yeah.
setup? I mean, they gotta have rooms like
Sure.
this at universities.
But you're right, and there's everything from hotels like a Best Western to universities to other state agencies are around that have those. It would just take time for us to find those, lock them in and secure them, and if there's a cost, our budget folks will get involved. I mean, it's a lot of logistics, it's not insurmountable, but the other is what you can do is also do the meeting here and then do the field trips like Member Buchanan's talking about. And now you hit the road and you can go out and look,
Right.
and it's not a formal meeting. You can get that done out of the way like in the morning, then the afternoon is all field trips. So there's a lot of options.
Okay.
All right,
It's-
well, we'll work hard to do that, and thank you, Jeff, for bringing that up.
Yeah,
We'll do our
absolutely.
best, and knowing full well the Lisa and Debbie and Bob, your responsibilities. Any other items on future agenda? All right, Bob, can we go into your report then?
Real quick, I was gonna give you an update, so where we are with the budget. We're still really, really happy and somewhat in shock. But nevertheless, Brittany's been dragging me around. She's been having several meetings. We've met with Senate and House leadership and appropriations to just let them know, here's the budget. We've gotten some good feedback, and so far, it's not going anywhere yet. Obviously, they haven't started talking about budget. I think what Brittany's mentioned to you guys is they're running all the bills, and if there's money attached to any of those, they'll run them up to about the appropriations level, and then they all stop, and they want to figure out where anything that's costing additional money matched with the executive's budget and with what their priorities are, then they'll hash it out. Pretty last, probably we're looking maybe somewhere into March-ish, maybe even April, before they really start diving into the budget. And then that's when we have to be ready for lots of questions. The governor's office, for example, they're getting hundreds of questions from all of the members. That's reaching out to us, we'll answer them, we've answered some directly. So nevertheless, we're staying very positive. We haven't heard anything scary yet on this budget. But to tag into Chad's presentation, I just want to let you guys know that within that budget, there's about $3.8 million that's going to help fix his septic system, his leach fields, and other things. So to accommodate that huge growth, there's still a lot to do at Homolivy. He showed you that water line crossing the LCR. That was a nightmare of a project, having to go under the river. And so anyway, we're investing in about 3.8 of that overall. 179 is going to go to Homolivy, at least for this year. So that's it. As far as the budget goes, I think what Debbie said earlier, anything can happen at any time, and we're just trying to be responsive. We've also been meeting with our outside partners to letting them know that this is where the money in the executive's budget is going to. And for Homolivy, it's pretty nice when you can talk to the Native American legislators and let them know, particularly from Hopi, that we're investing in the park now. We're going to keep it, and if we're going to keep it, we're going to invest in it, and we're going to make it a top-notch park here eventually. So those are the kinds of things that we're doing right now. So we're staying positive. We'll keep you updated if anything new. The second is a piece of information this morning is that Mr. Sefton has been approved by the governor's office for another term. So, yay.
They called me to set the Senate hearing, so.
Good.
For the
So
committee.
we'll get him through very, very quickly. Hopefully, we can get him with Board Member King. We can get her Senate confirmed here real quick. So he's got the oaths, I hope, in front of him that he has to sign, or he will
They're
soon
already-
before he leaves.
All that's been sent in.
Okay.
Should it come back?
She
All
has them, so you
notarized.
need to sign them, and, yeah. So anyway, so that's good news, so.
Absolutely.
So hopefully we'll have 2 board members confirmed at the end of the session. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Sarah Green, hopefully, will be confirmed next Wednesday at 2:00. I got an email asking if I was available for that day, so I'm thinking that would be the day for
Good.
her. So I don't know if you'll be able to join with her, but we'll see what happens on the agenda.
Yeah.
It might just be another.
This morning I spoke with not Morgan, different young, yeah, M name. 16th or the 23rd, I think, for March.
Okay.
So
Okay,
target.
Great, okay.
Anyway.
Very
and
good.
That's my update.
All right,
Any
thank you
questions?
much. All right, current events, board members, you may present a summary of any events or recent experiences or interest in the outdoor recreation community for us.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Jeff Buchanan, just with thanks to Mickey for visiting Santa Cruz County last month, meeting with a person and myself who's interested in constructing some trails, connecting Arizona Trail with the trails that go through Patagonia Lake State Park and several local city trails. So all very helpful, good education. And to that end, I got requested to meet with the Patagonia town manager yesterday. And he found out, of course, that I was on the Parks Board and started asking questions about how to improve parks within the town. You know, playground equipment is 30 years old and falling apart and all of those kinds of things. And I suggested that he talk to the city managers of both Sierra Vista and Wilcox, who've been very successful recently leveraging funds for similar sorts of projects, although both of those are probably on a much larger scale. And so, Mickey or your staff, if you could send me some emails, I'll connect this town manager with those and see if I can help them move forward. That's it.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Sarah, anything?
Nope, nothing from me, thanks.
All right, thank you, Sarah. So call to the public. I'll recognize anyone who may be online that would wish to address the board on any items of interest. Hearing none. So the future meeting dates are on the agenda. And again, we'll do everything possible to combine either a business meeting with a tour, whatever it might be between now. And I'm thinking even out loud when we talk about meeting dates, you know, perhaps July we do some sort of a real opportunity there that we can go out and go up to Flag or wherever it might be and have a session like that. So we'll keep that in mind and keep everyone going. So with that, staff, thank you again for a great meeting. Chad, thank you for giving us all the information about your wonderful park there. And with that, meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Jeff.
I'm leaving you my notebook, but I took the content.